Welcome to Looking Within, a podcast to help you quiet your mind, settle your body, and see God's presence in your everyday life. I'm Julie. I hope our time together will help you to feel more grounded, whole, and filled with a growing desire to be a conduit of God's love and presence to the world around you. Now, let's begin. This Lenten season, we've been talking about a new life and a new story. Sometimes our life gets a bit too routine. We have no reason to pop out of bed in the morning, excited for the day to begin. I think that's what we mean by a new life and a new story. So we've been watching closely what Jesus did, his practices, things like time away in silence and solitude, having a beginner's mind. And this week, we're thinking about the practice of surrender.
By surrender, we don't mean to give up and quit as much as we mean to let go. In Philippians chapter 2, we read how Christ was in the form of God but emptied himself. He let go of that and took on a human form, ultimately surrendered to death. In the Garden of Gethsemane, we hear Jesus pray, "Not my will, but yours be done." Surrender was at the heart of Jesus' life and story. Surrender is what we see so powerfully lived out on the cross on Good Friday.
Surrender is not about quitting, but it is challenging. It is letting go of control, letting go of what we want or like. It is following Jesus into places that, we just don't know how things will all turn out. But only in this surrender of what we think or want can we enter into the full life of abundance that God has for us. On Monday, Charles, you spoke of this practice of surrender on the train ride to Oregon. The trip wasn't as you had expected, but by surrendering, you could actually enjoy the trip that was. It sounded like a very interesting trip.
Yes, practicing surrender on that train has helped me practice it now as I face a diagnosis of cancer. Jesus lived this practice of surrender, and he also teaches us to do the same. Consider the story of the prodigal son, a parable of an unhappy family, a father and two sons. One son didn't want to live with his family anymore. He needed to be his own person, to go his own way, to tell his own story. His father let him go, even financing it by dividing up the inheritance and giving him his share. The son went off into a distant country and lived a new life, which at first was exciting. All this money at his own disposal. But soon the money ran out, and this new life he had created for himself started to fall apart. He was starving, wishing that he could join the pigs and eat their food, but that wasn't allowed by his new master.
He needed a new life and a new story. He looked back at his father's home. He saw it differently now. Once he saw his father as a hard man, rules. But now at his low point, he saw his father more clearly as a generous man. He had actually funded this foolish adventure of the prodigal. He had absolutely no doubts in his mind. After all the embarrassing things he had said and done to his father, he knew that his father would take him back, at least as a servant, not as a son. He surrenders. He lets go of his old story and old life. He makes his way to his father, and there, a new story and a new life.
And the thing about this new story and this new life that comes out of his moment of surrender, it is way, way better than he could have ever imagined. He thought his father would welcome him back as a servant, but when his father saw him at a distance, he ran to him, he put his arms around him and kissed him. He welcomed him back as a son, and the banquet began. He now was given a rich life with his father.
This story is a parable. It teaches us a lesson behind the details of the story. We are all looking for what some call the big four: love, peace, hope, and joy. But we can't get these on our own. Try as hard as we might, they always elude us. It is only by surrendering our old lives built around what we think, what we like, what we want, can we embrace the new life in Christ that offers us all of these, the love, peace, hope, and joy.
Are you familiar with the television program Dr. Phil? He's a counselor who brings people on to talk to them and about their lives. In many ways, their lives are really messed up. If you are familiar with him, he has this great line. After people have told Dr. Phil about their challenging lives and what they're doing to improve their situation, with a straight face he asks, "And how's that working for you?" That is the moment of surrender for Dr. Phil's guest. To look at what they're doing and admit it's not working. The question may help us enter into this practice of surrender. Is there some area of our lives where we are losing sleep, angry, worried, or fearful? We're working hard trying to fix things. Can we gently ask ourselves this question? And how's that working? It opens our heart to enter into this practice of surrender.
In the Garden of Gethsemane, the only path to the new life and the new story of Easter for Jesus is the practice of surrender. Not my will, but yours be done. For the prodigal son, the only way back to a new life and new story is by surrendering his old life and his old story. And so too for us. If we will ask the Dr. Phil question, how's that working for you? We can more easily enter into the practice of surrender. Life's not about me. It's about God for me, God with me. Not my will, but yours be done. Let's bring that thought into our quiet moments together. In this quiet space and time, I'd invite you to gently close your eyes and to take a few deep breaths in and out, in and out. Hear the sound of the bowl calling you to look within. Let it center you. Let it awaken you to God's presence. Can you go to the places in your life that aren't working well right now? You've tried hard to change. What would it be like to surrender now to God's plans for you? Stay with that for a few moments. We'll be back with you in about 2 minutes. Take one more minute to stay and to rest in God's plans for you, God's promises for good for you. Feel the weight taken off your shoulders. Rest now in God. I'd invite you now to take a few deep breaths in and out. In and out. Hear the bowl sound calling you back to this day. Gently open your eyes, remaining still for a moment longer. Surrender is not something that comes to us naturally. We like to be in control, do things our way. But we've all lived through the disastrous outcome of self-centered living. After a few of those experiences, we don't need a full-blown crisis to surrender to God's good and gracious will. We can practice it each morning. With Paul, we can pray, "It is not I who lives, but Christ who lives in me."
On Friday, in a second bonus episode this week, we'll lead you into a guided meditation. As you take some moments to rest your mind and your heart, you can open up to the wisdom of surrendering to God's good and gracious will in your life.
Thank you for making time for your inner self today, for developing and enriching your relationship with God through reflection and discovery. Whatever you've experienced, carry that with you in the coming days. You can find more episodes at our website, Gloria-Day, that's DEI.com/lookingwithinpodcast, or subscribe through your favorite podcast app. If you know someone who might enjoy and benefit from this podcast, share it with them. Your financial contributions make this ministry possible. To give, visit gloria-day.com/giving. Thank you for your support, and we'll see you next time.